Hey Rectangle Watchers, I spend a lot of my free time becoming emotionally attached to things that are entirely made up. Side note, about 5/7 of the time, these sort of things come out of my own head. Mental math. Today's mindless rectangle activity is Alter Ego, the game where you live your own life. We all grew up with pretend. When I was young, escapism was the way I made connections with real-life people. I love that form of self-expression for young people. In fact, when I was that age, I was really hoping that I would find some sort of career in pretend, as many people interested in pretend are looking for. At the age of roughly 9, I found my friends and I were looking for either some sort of safe empowerment or some good stories. At the time, I probably wanted a mix with a bit more of the latter. I remember planting flags in all of my games of pretend, saying that they would be material for my next novel. Real cute past me. Real cute. But I still think you're stupid and should read the Time Travel Advice Journal before you do something stupid. Moving on, there are some other really interesting reoccurring character tropes within Recess. One of my own was to be the kid who, when everything was too calm, would say, "But then," thus adding to the narrative another final obligatory boss figure. Yay, past me. There was one bloke who kept on hinting that he secretly wanted to fall in love with his crush at the time, or have some sort of equivalent to breathing fire. And he mostly showed up for those things exclusively. There was this cluster of kids who always tried to turn our invisible villain into some sort of peer or superior. There were the people who chose to be martyrs and minor characters who laid down their lives to make sure that our villains were forces to be immersively reckoned with. There was one kid who would always copy the plot of the last movie she saw at the theater. And then there was the villain. He never started as a villain. He was a hero, just like the rest of us wanted to be. At the beginning of Recess, he was an all-around badass, a good guy in all forms. And for the record, in real life, he was the same good guy. Before and after the bell, just a little more quietly. But it was always a little after our team's first success against the enemy that we would figure out that one of us was changing. Sometimes it was a magic spell or a dark computer virus. And hell, some days I felt like he just wanted to go evil. But for all intents and purposes, we all had to eventually come to the conclusion that our once most valuable asset had now become our most worthy rival and feared threat. You know, at times some of us resented his unwillingness to progress, but now I admire him. His treachery made him a real hero. He was truthful to our stories by being deceitful to our characters. He taught me that to find the true depth in a good always prevails story, you need someone to disagree. 6 imaginations all bounding for a mix of mankind and their own ego without anything to stop them? Now, that wouldn't stand out at all. We beat the baddie 20 minutes before the bell. Now what? But then, out of the body of the fallen Lord of Dark. Shut the up, Owen. It will be exactly the same as our other stories. And thus, the story would end. I mean, the dudes and damsels would be safe and sound, and we would be forgotten in pretend history. But the villain would fight that urge to give in to success. He refused to bore us. He always saved my butt then. Weak pun, weak pun. But then, he would writhe on the ground in pain and grab his head, and right then and there under Black Castle Forticus, the dark magician's evil mind-controlling reptilian familiar would burst from his f***ing head. Awesome. He would ask us to join him and his somewhere still living master to purge good once and for all. Often one of us would break the immersion and sigh exasperatedly, whereas the last 4 of us would stare him dead in the eyes and say, "Never." Because, duh, that's what people whose purpose is to vanquish evil do. Be brave. But to be brave, first, there had to be fear to overcome. For once, we had somebody amping up the bad guys to make other people heroes, not just themselves. We didn't have to put up with nearly as many problems with their conclusions pre-programmed into the sentence they were born from. No more. Robo Dastardly has an impenetrable wall that can only be broken by my self-indulgent. No, the villain saved us from that. Robo Dastardly has over 1,000 dastardly robos guarding his lair. Among them is your long-lost friend. Slow-mo Snow, please, you have to come back. There is no Slow-mo Snow anymore. Now, there is only Robo-Snow. Then I suppose the only thing left to do is duel. To battle!
battle!
Oh, sorry, Rectangle Watchers. Nostalgia gets the best of me sometimes. Oh yeah, what was the point of all this again? Oh, I remember. It's funny how people have told me all my life that imagination is a virtue found in a child and lost as an adult. But when I look into the games of children, I don't necessarily see minds with creative aptitude. Instead, I see well-practiced and unregulated imaginations. To this day, I look at myself from back then and say, yeah, I could do that. Well then, why don't you? And the only rational answer I can come up with is, what if it sucks? I mean, that's something that never occurred to me back then. The thing is, everything can and probably will suck without revision. And unfortunately in my age demographic, quality control of thought does matter. If I only got to read the first draft of any book I've picked up thus far, I wouldn't have any stories in my head, just preliminary ideas. But it's sad to see how few of the people I played with back then do any creative work right now. I have no idea what the villain is up to right now, but I hope that his different mindset is still at work somewhere. I hope that he's started his first screenplay or built his own Death Star. Because being surrounded by thoughts of all flavors, one can find themselves permission to let out a few more ideas of their own. Who knows, maybe by the next generation we'll be able to save the ever-evaporating film industry, and finally bring back the mentality of plot over budget. Then again, I probably am still seeing the sequel to Blue Space Cat Pocahontas: Attack of the Capitalists anyway. There is no hope. There is no hope.
No hope.
Thanks, Rectangle Watchers. Later is the next time I will see you.